Hello, everybody, and welcome to this fast chat sponsored by D2iQ. I'm the contributing editor over at Data Center Knowledge, and joining me today are Lauren Fishburne, Solutions Architect, and John Miller, Distinguished Sales Engineer over at D2iQ. It's really great to have you guys here.
Hello.
Thanks for having us back.
Yeah, good to be here, Bill.
You know, the last time we did this, and if anybody wants to see the pre-call recording, it's basically all Marvel and action hero discussions. Really, really good stuff. But the last time we talked about innovation, modernization, we really decided to evolve that conversation today. Very recently, everybody listening, we did a super fun study for Information Week, and we wanted to know, what are people doing around things like modernization, innovation, and so on? Here's the thing. Everybody listening, time out. Not marketing words. These are now terms around survival. And what we found is surviving in the digital age means improving processes, improving operational efficiencies, getting closer to customers and end users. And here was the big finding to round off the top five: reducing complexity. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about this junction of aspiration, innovation, and obviously modernization in digital space. So I am so excited to be here again with this fantastic D2iQ team. Since these are called fast chats, obviously I'm talking quickly, we're going to dive right into the conversation. Okay. First, this is obvious. It's really clear. We know that the market that we're currently in right now is actively trying to modernize tool sets, improve how they interact with a connected digital economy, and just operate more efficiently. Lauren, I'm gonna actually start with you here. There was a really great topic that you and I discussed offline, right? Where does aspiration meet innovation? And here's my question to you: where does it face its challenges today?
So aspiration meets innovation, and where the rubber meets the road for most of our customers is they've got this really great idea for this application, or they've got some idea of how they want to make this application better. They've got to have a platform to run it on, and they've got to have a platform where they can bring all of their developers that they need to make this stuff happen and be able to operate consistently and in a scalable manner. It's not enough today for me to just build an application for one person or for one small team or, one little bitty microcosm use case. I've got to have applications that can scale to whatever need they have in market. And without that, our customers really start to lose focus. And the platform is really where a lot of complexity starts to creep in. That's where our customers start to see the most, I'm going to call it creep, because that's just the, term that's coming to mind, technical creep, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have all of these different components come in, and it adds so much complexity. No longer are our engineers just a network engineer or just a storage engineer or just a database engineer. You have to be all of those things. You have to understand all of it, and you have to know how to secure it. A lot of the jobs are starting to combine together. I have to know how my storage interacts with my database, interacts with my connectivity. And if I don't understand all of that, then I lack the expertise to make the platform work for my company, for my mission.
Mm-hmm. And that makes a lot of sense. And I love what you said. And by the way, if anybody listening is out there, so important to be multi-skilled and understand the bigger parameters of how you're working with a business. John, let me ask you that same question. I just love this concept where aspiration meets innovation. And especially in today's world, there's some new challenges emerging. So what do you think?
Oh, absolutely. Right. And it goes back to exactly what you said, right? The whole digital transformation, it's becoming a reality for people. And one of the things I've seen lately in the marketplace is, right, a lot of people are consumed by, hey, I need to fit, 4 or 5 different roles, but now add that to my cloud provider or add that to my existing on-prem environment. How do I bring cloud native technology into those platforms? And it can be overwhelming, right? You can't learn 1,000 services. So that's one of the things that we've tried to do is simplify that, distill it down to where it's consumable. And so, let us take the hard problem, make it easy so that digital transformation is really focused on mission, right? And taking the old skills that you had and transforming those into the new skills that are going to fit this environment. Because I've seen it so many times with a lot of our customers. They're so used to old school security and operating hardening, and then digital transformation comes along, and it's like, where do I go? Like, where do I fit in? And having that automation, that environment to get them there, gives them a leg up to really make that digital transformation, not only for themselves, but for their mission, right? For their applications, to be able to get to those points very quickly, as opposed to weeks, months, years of schooling, training, and retooling themselves, right? So there's a lot happening in this arena right now, from everywhere, from security to, like Lauren said, to storage. It's amazing the things that are coming out, and things that we're learning right along the way with everyone else. So it's really cool.
All right, I want to stay on this topic because this is a really interesting one, and because of our conversation, I actually had to shift the questions a little bit because I really want to know the answer to this. I'm sure the audience wants to know too. So I usually, like I said, save this for later, but I want to ask you all about use cases because I feel it's important to understand what's happening in the real world and what we are effectively doing around innovation. So John, I want to start with you here. Can you discuss maybe a real world customer that's facing modernization complexity? Maybe they're running things like multi-cluster or multi-cloud environments. And you know what I'm curious about, John? Where are they stuck?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the pieces that we've been working with, or one of the agencies we work with, is custom border protection. And so one of the key pieces that they've been dealing with is how to modernize, right? So a little sprinkle of bare metal, a little sprinkle of the cloud provider, a little sprinkle of virtualization on-prem, right? And so what we've helped introduce is kind of a common platform to give them really the leg up, right? We're taking people that have been used to security done one way, right? Hardening a system, I won't say legacy practices, but what we consider modern security and audit and compliance, but also application deployment. And so what we really want to do is help bring them into the modern age with cloud native capabilities. One, to get out of those stovepipes, right? No longer do I want to build a stovepipe that's costing me X amount of dollars, but I also need to have a platform that's going to allow me to expand in just what I have today, right? And so what we were able to help them do is, spin up their environments in these hybrid scenarios, right? Reusing what they have, but also consolidating everything. So now we've developed a central IT, right? Being able to deploy, hundreds of apps in months rather than months and years. And so accelerating things, being able to give people, right? We're kind of talking about having new skill sets, but making those accessible. And so that's what we want to do, is introduce those new complexities, but also make it consumable for these teams that are new to Kubernetes, because it is complex, and we want to, help reduce that complexity through automation, but also enable them to use the assets that they have, whether it's cloud or on-prem, right? And so that's the goal here, and making them successful and to be able to support their missions that they need to support. And that's the goal. So,
John, that was such a cool explanation, right? And I really love this concept, right? When innovation becomes both consumable and measurable, right? Where you can actually touch it and see it and feel it. I think that's so important. And what a use case. I mean, talk about critical operations. Oh my goodness. Lauren, you're boots on the ground. You're a solutions architect, and you're the person who gets a chance to, like we were talking about earlier, right? Be the technical liaison to the business. Talk to me about some real world innovations or use cases that you've seen out there in different kinds of environments. And where do you see people get stuck, and how do they overcome that?
So with CBP, we really had a team ready to absorb the solution. Not all of our customers are that lucky. One of my customers, about a month into their migration project, they lost 3 of their developers. And that was their entire team. They had no developers for a good 4 to 5 months. And because they lost all of their 3 developers, they didn't exactly know how all of the applications were architected. They didn't know which services were doing what, and it became a little bit tough to track down the dependencies. So one of the good news stories is that this customer took a crawl, walk, run approach and just started breaking apart the different pieces of the application so that they could both migrate it, but also understand it. And in that breaking it apart, they developed 2 or 3 others that could operate those applications, that knew what they were doing, that understood them enough to be able to troubleshoot them when there were problems. And this is really a scenario where you can have more eyes on the applications easily. And the platform allows that. The platform encourages that. So, not all of our customers are in these ideal scenarios, but for this one, because they were moving to Kubernetes, they were still able to make the transition and learn more about their applications and get up to speed quickly.
Mm-hmm. And that makes a lot of sense, right? Giving access to these powerful tools to people to access them and use them and actually become inspired to do great things with technology like automation. John, let me go back to you here for a second. I had a chance to work with data. I work with information all the time, structured, unstructured, all sorts of different kinds of platforms. There's a saying in our industry, without good data, you're just another person with an opinion. So what we're seeing cross industries to make innovation around apps easier. But that's the question, right? What are we doing to make innovation around modern applications and access to data fundamentally easier?
Yeah. And, obviously we've all kind of hit that service mesh thing. But where I'm really seeing a lot of great innovation and data is right up this alley, right, is container storage, right? The ability to have that decoupled the way it is and introduce new capabilities, real-time encryption, decoupling of data, ACLs on top of that data that's mounted in these volumes, right? We're seeing a lot of people want to build and consolidate their infrastructure but still tie into its external projects, right? I want to be able to pull in data where it makes sense, but also operate on that data at the edge where it makes sense. So you kind of get these best of both worlds. Pulling that data in, right? We all have concerns. It's like, hey, that's my data. I really don't want to share it unless it's secured. How do I do that without redoing my application? So these constructs that, Kubernetes and things that, we help develop the CSI technology as part of our transition through containerization. Seeing this coupled with innovation is amazing, right? Real-time encryption. I can log into a container and literally not see the data. I can't see the data outside of it, and it's protected. And that's the kind of innovation you're going to see, is just things that make it so transparent for integration. Just like you said, why are you not using them? You should be using these technologies, right? Don't rely on old security standards and audits. Really embrace this technology, pull it in, and that's part of our goal, right? Is integrating these technologies to make it easy for you to consume, right? That's the goal here. So,
Lauren, I kind of want to ask you a follow-up question here. I'm listening to John describe this, and I like where this is going. All right. John's talking about getting this data, making it more consumable. Cool. That's awesome. But what happens when you actually get this data, and how do you ensure it's up to par? Let me just to clarify, that is like ensuring that things like audit and compliance standards are there for you, or this is something that people maybe haven't heard of, audit drift.
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone needs these data streams, right? And you've got to have them. You've got to have them ingested properly so that the data gets formatted, so that you have data that is consumable by your application at the time of need for your application, right? We're working in real time with a lot of these customers. They want the data yesterday. So we've got to have these standard ways of building data pipelines and fast data pipelines. And a lot of our customers are starting to standardize how they do that with like Kafka and Cassandra and Spark. We have a whole kind of blog series that's about fast data pipelines. You should go check it out. But the fast data pipelines are really enabling our customers to spin this stuff up on the drop of a hat. Right. And then I have an entire data pipeline that can handle the data from ingest to manipulation, to pulling it all the way through into my application, just like that. And I have it for every single use case I could ever want. So I can do that data pipeline, that same routine over and over again.
All right, Lauren, we're talking about data. We're talking about data pipelines. We're talking about information. There's no way I was going to be able to sidestep this question. It's going to be about security. We've got distributed users in our connected economy. We've got new kinds of challenges. We've got new application goals. You just talked about them in your use cases. Here's the question, right? How do you modernize things like code and applications to support these new innovation initiatives? And most of all, how does it impact things like modern security? And maybe this is a term that everyone's heard of already, things like zero trust.
So to get towards some of the zero trust concepts, modernizing your security and application security in detail, you really have to start at the top. This is a holistic problem now. This is not just one person who comes after the fact and secures an application or secures a network, right? This is no longer just one person in a vacuum. With DevSecOps, you've got to do it throughout, and you've got to have multiple folks looking at the problem with a security hat on top of their head at that time. One of our customers that has done this and done it really, really well is Royal Caribbean. From the moment we started to move from DCOS to DKP to their Kubernetes clusters, their chief security officer brought us all in the room. He sat us all down and said, all right, we want to do this migration, but we want to make sure that we are implementing these security best practices as we go into it. And everybody put their solutions hat on at that point in time, and brought all of the best of breed solutions that they were looking for together to really make them work. And because we did that up front, by the time that they got to rolling it out on the ships, we weren't talking about security anymore. Security was baked in from the get-go. They knew how to run all of their compliance scans. They run them regularly. They knew how to do MTLS across their service mesh and make it work flawlessly with no hiccups. They knew exactly how much latency that was going to cost them. And on the ships, you can imagine latency is the name of the game. So this customer just really took the bull by the horns, and they owned their security strategy and brought us in to make sure that everything was shored up along the way. And we were able to deploy on top of their ships just in an absolute mechanical fashion. It was anticlimactic by the time we got to rolling out. It's amazing.
John, I'm going to ask you to help me out. We're going to look at a crystal ball, right? We're going to look ahead, and we're going to talk about something that's really, really special, right? I had a chance to spend a good year and some months in the DevOps space. So I actually know what this is, but I'm really excited for you to help me look at the future for a little bit. First of all, John, what is AI ops? How does it impact infrastructure specifically? And most of all, how does it impact the people challenge that so many people are experiencing?
One of our key strengths, having done automation for, 9 years as a company, we've learned a lot along the way of, not only legacy platforms and how to integrate them and understand what they're doing, but how do we bring that into this new environment, right? It's Kubernetes, like I said, right? It's complex. So what do I need to understand? How do I understand how this affects my security posture, whether it's zero trust, right? I could introduce new applications, and I need to understand how they're affecting the rest of my applications, where performance lies, right? I don't want people going back to a terminal on a system and saying, well, the load is really high on this system. What am I supposed to do, right? And so AI ops is going to be a great evolution where the cluster is actually learning about itself, that we're able to produce that information up front as opposed to externally gathering all that data, munging on it for quite some time and then developing a hypothesis that, could be hours, days long, right? And I keep getting these alerts, and they start to become benign. I don't want to deal with them anymore. So this is going to give you a very upfront way to analyze your systems, to understand the drift, to understand what's happening from a trend aspect, real time, because your system's learning about itself as opposed to learning about some external algorithm that thinks it understands what Kubernetes is really meant to do, right? And so again, all cloud native, all built into that environment. So it's portable, consumable, and part of our automation, right? And that's the goal. That's where you're going to see a lot of things coming from us.
Lauren, I'm gonna end this with you. That was our last question. I want to get some of your words of wisdom, because you had a really good answer for security, right? And I don't want to gloss over that at all, because you said some really important things: reducing human error, right? Making sure that we don't have things like drift. You talked about improving how we looking at and securing pipelines. Now I'm going to ask you about the future. You could talk about AOps, or tell me what you see in the future.
I think AI ops is really where things are going, because I think operator fatigue is real. We have so many platform administrators that are overloaded, that are being asked to do so many different things, right? Everybody, it seems like, has a problem getting the right people in the right spots at the right time these days. I think we're still going to keep having this operator fatigue that happens. And part of being able to have a great system that runs well, runs smoothly every day, so you've got to have smart eyes on it, and you've got to use your operator in the most efficient manner possible, right? I don't want to waste my operator's time digging through and getting frustrated with a dashboard just reporting wrong. I want to make sure that I've got that operator focused on the high alerts whenever I need him or her. And I want to make sure that they are ready to respond, right? And I think so much of what I see in AI ops is starting to realize that we've had this problem for a little bit of operator fatigue and operator, overuse, that we've got to have the folks in those seats help us understand some of the challenges too. I think there's still a lot of movement around here that we could do from a model building standpoint that's really exciting to me, around what a good operator does and how they react to certain scenarios. I think we've got a long ways to go there, and I'm really excited about what we can do in the future with that.
I'm excited too. You heard it from Lauren. Don't let data make you tired, right? Be a happy and awake operator. Thank you so much, John. Thank you so much, Lauren, for spending some time with us today. Big thank you for D2iQ for sponsoring this Fast Chat. If you want to learn more on how to do things like Kubernetes the right way, be sure to visit D2iQ.com. That's D, the number 2, IQ.com. Thanks for spending some time with us, everybody.
Thanks for having us.